And I appreciate that perspective that you give, because these are real life potential scenarios given climate, given that there may be days when there's simply no wind. And there may be days when there simply is just not enough sun. So what we have, if you take an opportunity, I'm not sure yet, I'm not going to be presumptuous, but if you read the bill, we're working with the IOUs as well as the POUs specifically for off-ramps to deal with this situation. Not every day the reality is going to be a sunny day, and not every day is going to be a windy day, enough that we can generate onto our grid specifically the energy that are needed for our ratepayers throughout the state of California, whether you're an IOU or POU. But we have built off-ramps specifically to deal with this issue, and maybe staff will tell me exactly where it's at in the page. I don't know specifically on which page, but I can point you towards that right there where we have some built-in off-ramps.
Okay, well, thank you, Senator.
No, absolutely.
I certainly did read the bill.
Yeah.
I still have those concerns,
Sure.
though, because I'm not sure that there are any reliable models worldwide for us to follow when we increase our renewables to this percentage of our total baseload. The second question I have is concerning the price of energy in California. And, if you look at what's happened.
Mr. Oberholtz is trying to ask a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you look at what's happened with the price of electricity in California recently, it's pretty alarming. If you compare, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, if you compare our average energy prices against the rest of the country, we're 41% higher than the national average in residential rates, 36% higher in commercial rates, and 62% higher than the national average in industrial rates, which really affect the competitiveness of our state. And if you also look at the study that E3 quoted that Dr. Quirk mentioned a few minutes ago, they estimate that those costs are likely to increase 47% by the year 2030, and that's under the current renewable portfolio standards of performance. So my concern is that we're not really appreciating the economic impact that increasing the RPS to 50% will have on the state. And the Little Hoover Commission shares that concern. They issued a report last October that said that an essential component of implementing the RPS is a firm commitment to fiscal responsible stewardship. And this is the Little Hoover Commission talking. They say, we are deeply concerned that the insufficient attention paid to this issue, Californians still lack the measuring tools to evaluate the full cost of implementing the RPS simultaneously with other major energy policy goals. So I'm wondering what we can do. Well, first of all, I'm wondering what you estimate the effect that increasing the RPS to 50% would have on electricity rates in general in the state of California, and what we can do to mitigate those impacts.
Well, the end goal objective, obviously, with increasing the RPS is to actually lower the utility rates. That's first and foremost the goal. The goal is not to say, let's go solar because it makes us feel good by channeling the power of the sun or channeling the power of the wind. The end goal objective at the end of the day is to lower consumer utility rates, whether you're a beneficiary of an IOU or a POU. Right now, at this point in history, the price per kilowatt with regards to solar in the renewable space is at parity or, in fact, lower than traditional fossil fuels. I'll stake that claim, with a full authority. At this point, right now, it's either at parity or it's the lowest, if you will, in any point in history. And that's according to the same U.S. Energy International Agency that you made a reference to. So with regards to specifically rates going up as a result of the increase in the portfolio, that's a premise that I don't buy. That's a premise that I clearly don't buy. The end goal objective, obviously, is to reduce our reliability on fossil fuels. The end goal objective is to lower the utility rates for folks. We have put in safeguards and exit off-ramps for the IOUs and the POUs. In fact, with regards to the RPS, the 30% standard portfolio, they're there. They're actually there. If you read, the measure, the original RPS law, they're actually there. They have not asked a waiver as of today with regards to effectuating any of the off-ramps that currently exist in law. They're actually in law right now. And we have the same off-ramps that are built in to this RPS as well, too.
Well, I thank you for the very candid answer to the question. What I heard you say was that you think that raising the RPS to 50% will lower the cost of electricity in California.
Yes.
And I don't share your optimism in that respect. And the chief reason is that we saw that when we instituted the original RPS, it did not lower the cost of electricity. It raised it substantially. And so I think it would be difficult to believe that increasing the RPS would not continue to raise it. I think, in fact, that is what will continue to happen. That's my chief concern, is because my constituents already pay 47% more per kilowatt hour than the average in the United States, and I think that they would pay even more than that were we to pass this bill. But I thank you for the answer to the question. Thank you.
I'm aware. I am through the chair. I'm aware of that methodology. I do think that methodology is flawed, and I do believe, and we can talk offline. I think that it's very misleading, also too.
Well, I look forward to it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, then Mr. Patterson.
Well, I think you're actually both right, because the statistics indicate that rates are higher in the state of California, but bills are lower. And so the policies to have more energy efficiency and to have more renewables have reduced the cost of electricity, but they've also raised the rates. And how does that both exist? Well, at the same time, it's because Californians use less energy because these policies have been so effective. They use less energy to perform the same tasks as people in other states. And so I would really encourage my colleague, because I know from our many hearings together he likes accuracy, that you really need to look at the bills. And the average bill in California is lower than the national average, not higher, because Californians use less energy because these policies have been effective. I also wanted to just address the definition question that was brought up by Ms. Burke on cost-effective. That is a term in code already and technologically feasible. That's why it's used in both of our bills and in the previous bill. And so when ARB does these regulations, they will do a cost-benefit analysis. The costs of health impacts from the carbon, avoided deaths, hospital visits, versus the cost of complying with the regulations. So that is the cost-effective analysis that ARB performs right now. I also want to just address sort of misconceptions about electric cars. According to Time Magazine, the cheapest car on the road to drive today is an electric car, the electric Fiat. And that is because the leases are $150 to $200 a month, and there's very little fuel cost because it's off of electricity. Now, the issue that's brought up about access to chargers is a huge issue, and I'll give the anecdote. You know, I used to be very, very poor. In fact, I used to live in my vehicle for a time when I was going to college and it dropped out of high school. I paid more in costs on my vehicle then, like a lot of poor folks, than I do now, because old cars break down, need a lot of work, and cost a lot of fuel. And that is the interesting issue here, is that if we can make more of these cars available for a larger segment of the population, it can be an economic benefit to, as well as the health benefit that it already is for these populations. I support this bill, and I support, and I really want to thank Senator De Leon for having the courage to tackle the fuel portion. It's the toughest portion, but whether it needs to be 50-50-50 is not as important as we can't meet the climate goals of the state articulated by not just one Democratic governor, but one Republican one too. We can't meet those goals without tackling the fuel issue. And I think that this legislation is important enough, and this move important enough to tackle climate change for some of the reasons articulated, is that when populations have to move, when there are drought impacts, when there are temperature impacts, when there is pollution, who are the people who pay for it the most? The poor, always. And if we don't do a good job of tackling climate change, it will be the poor, not only in places like the Philippines and Bangladesh, who already are suffering from the effects of climate change, but in places like Florida and California that suffer the most. And I sincerely believe that 50 years from now that people will wonder what places, what people in this time were willing to take strong action. And I also think that they will look to California and go, some folks actually did. And I hope that we will all be numbered in that, and I support this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Would you like the pro tem to respond, Mr. Williams?
Well, through the chair, just because he triggered
Briefly,
something,
if you
and it
could.
actually
Yeah,
goes back to
several other
Mr.
people.
Obernolte. I'm sorry, Obernolte. And we don't know each other, and I have no reason to believe that you would be misleading with regards to what you say. But there is a difference between your rate as well as your bill. And
Pro tem, I don't want to get in the
Okay.
back. Do you want to?
All right, that's
why don't
fine.
you want to cover this in your? Why don't you
I'll
cover this
cover
in
in
your
a statement,
conclusion?
so then,
Why don't you
yeah.
cover this in
Okay.
your summary,
Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
in the end, Mr. Patterson, then Mr. Hadley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have another theory as to why the rates are so high and yet the bills are on average low. I think it has to do with the fact that consumers are pretty wise and pretty smart. They see that their rates are going up, and so they turn their thermostats down and they turn their heaters down and up. I represent a portion of California where we have 105 highs and we have 30-degree lows, and I can tell you that up and down the state where we are not in these mild climates, where we have these high swings, yes, people manage the price tag of this energy by simply using less of it because they simply can't afford it. You're going to give CARB unlimited power. Are you sure you want to do that?
Well, going back to your first point, you're absolutely correct with regards to reduced energy load and energy efficiency. Folks, because of the policies that have been generated from this bicameral body, many folks in California have reduced their energy load, which is a good thing. Which is a very good thing. So your theory that you move forward is absolutely a correct theory. With regards to the issue of CARB, I think I've answered on numerous occasions with Ms. Burke as well as Ms. Bonilla and Ms. Garcia, the willingness to sit down with those interested folks on this issue with regards to CARB. I do believe they should report back to the legislature. I do believe they should be held accountable as they move forward with formulating policies.
My question was about unlimited power to CARB. That is
I
what
just answered your question,
that is what
Mr.
you're
Patterson.
granting here.
I just answered your question, Mr. Patterson.
No, you didn't.
Well, then
But
we'll
I'm
we'll
used to
respectfully
that.
disagree with
I'm
you.
used to that. All right. Why a mandate instead of a target?
Because it's very clear we have to get to our goals if, in fact, we're going to deal with this issue of climate change. For example, Mr. Patterson, you're in Central Valley, Fresno, I take it, right?
Yes.
20% of your constituents actually suffer from asthma, 1 out of 5. You have double the rates in the state of California. In fact, you have the worst air pollution in the country. Your unemployment rate is hovering 10%. It's almost double the national average. Not quite California, we're at 6.1, but you're almost double that right now. And the issue is, what are we going to do as we move forward to create a new economy and create jobs? I was just in your neck of the woods not too long ago, and I know you don't represent Southeast Fresno specifically. You have Clovis and other areas. But in Southeast Fresno, we actually put, solar panels on top of roofs of poor communities. These are communities that obviously are going to reduce their energy load. At the same time, they're going to create distributed generation. And their rates are going to go much lower on a monthly basis. These are, because of what I'm hearing from colleagues here, is a sense of intentionality as you move forward with an agenda, with policy to create a new economy of tomorrow and reduce harmful emissions that are impacting disproportionately people of color and poor people throughout the state of California, but especially acute, Mr. Patterson, in your neighborhoods and the city that you represent. So it is absolutely critical that we set certain targets. Now, back in 2006, when we moved forward with the climate warming, the Global Warming Solutions Act, many folks who testified at this table here today said that A, it was unrealistic, B, it was naive to set certain targets. In fact, this would wreck the economy. But here we are well on our way to reaching these targets. In fact, there are several IOUs who will hit 40% by the year 2020. They're not going to hit 33%. They're going to hit 40% by the year 2020. So these goals are, in fact, realistic, Mr. Patterson. Very realistic and within reach.
Thank you. Further questions?
We have had comment here by other members, Democratic members as well, about having, I think, more than oversight of CARB. And I think reporting is one thing. The legislature approving what CARB decides to do with fuels is going to have a direct and absolute impact on the price of gasoline for the very people that you say we care about. So I want to, and this will be my last question here. You're giving huge authority to CARB. I think it's unlimited, number one. Number two, the language in the portion of the bill, Section 43013, you've amended the Health and Safety Code to state that the board shall adopt, and it will be in furtherance of achieving reduction in petroleum use in motor vehicles by 50% by 2030. Now, without a schematic and without direction from this legislature, I am concerned that we will get an out-of-control set of procedures and approaches to this. The very fact that members of this body, as well as myself, we have written and called CARB repeatedly to try and get some kind of an opening. We do a lot of constituent services work as a direct result of CARB. Granting them this much absolute power with merely a reporting is insufficient. We need to be able to approve what they're doing with respect to the pricing and the supply of gasoline. So I am concerned about your unwillingness to constrain or control CARB. For example, I am concerned that we don't reach the 50% without CARB feeling the pressure of the bill and creating, quite frankly, price spiking or supply reduction. Would you be willing to amend your bill to remove from CARB's authority within it their tampering with supply or tampering with price?
Mr. Patterson, I'll be more than happy to engage with you and work with you, and be more happy to meet with you. This bill has been in print since February 24th. This is the very first time you come to me with any concerns. You've had 3.5 months to engage with me. I read with quite interest your op-ed piece that you published, but you had yet to come with me or your staff members. This bill's been in print since February 24th. I don't know where you've been, Mr. Patterson.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Hadley, then Mr. Daly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's been a lot of discussion here about CARB's authority, starting with Assemblywoman Burke and continuing around the table. This isn't the opinion of a few people. In October of 2014, the Little Hoover Commission simply stated that the governor should use his veto authority and the legislature should refuse to impose any new mandates on energy use in the state until the state has a strategic energy plan. We have got this completely backwards to set these 2030 targets, to give CARB very broad, whether it's limited or unlimited oversight, I'll leave to others to debate, but to give to CARB very broad authority and then to negotiate around scraps of oversight, whether it's one member from this chamber or the occasional reporting requirement. This is the part of our state government where we should be setting state energy policy, forming a strategic energy plan, and rather than doing that, we are simply setting a target and turning over to unelected appointees the job of trying their best to make it work. I believe it's a dereliction of duty for the members of the state legislature to hand this degree of authority to CARB. I believe that what we should be doing is we should be doing this in the reverse order. We should be developing a state energy plan, and then we should be using mandates as part of the mix of tools to achieve that plan. So I am reluctantly going to have to oppose this bill today. But the question I wanted to ask is to follow up on Mr. Obernolte's line of questioning. If renewable energy has reached parity or better, if this is reducing our average electricity costs, our net energy cost, what is the need for state mandates to achieve the goals?
Well, let me be very clear about this. With regards to the energy, if in fact at time of purchase of renewable, if it's costly to the consumer, we have the off-ramps drafted where the IOUs and the POUs do not have to purchase that part of the utility mix. If there's transmission issues, if in fact it's too costly to the ratepayer, they don't have to purchase it. So the exit ramps are built in to the measure. So I want to just, so you can alleviate any concern about that issue. It's there, as opposed to it's mandated and capped and you have to purchase the renewable irrespective of the price point, irrespective of what you get per kilowatt. With regards to what you can purchase, with regards to traditional fossil fuels, if in fact, if it's less, it's more expensive, you don't have to purchase it. So we're not mandating that part right there. The off-ramps are there. So I just want, so if there's any concern with that, I want to make sure that you know that, Mr. Hatt.
Yeah, because those are two very different statements. I believe that, homeowners and renters and businesses are making, multi-decade decisions. Businesses are investing billions of dollars based on certain assumptions or expectations about the energy climate in which they're going to be operating. To say that they've reached parity in price on the one hand, and to say that they've reached parity subject to these off-ramps are two very different statements.
Well, they're absolutely two very different things. You're absolutely right, Mr. Hadley. There's no question about it. The reality is that right now they have reached parity. But what you're doing is you're creating a potential scenario in the near future or far out in the future. What happens with the fluctuations and the volatility of the market? So I can tell you right now, with regards to the fossil fuels, we already have that volatility right now. Right now, we have gas price spikes all the time when there's a refinery outage or if there's quote-unquote maintenance being conducted. We just endured that just recently, a few months ago, ExxonMobil refinery station down in Torrance, California. Up in Northern California, in Miss Bonilla, there was, all of a sudden, there was a fire. And all of a sudden, what did we witness? We witnessed prices go up. It's about supply and demand. It's about what's happening with regards to the Middle East. It's about refineries. Those are what drives the volatility in the gas prices. Yet as of today, we've heard no questions specifically, and I'll be partisan in this case, we have no questions from the Republicans as to why gas prices go up and go down, go up and go down. Not one single, which I find somewhat baffling right there. So to get to your point specifically, the off-ramps are built in to the measure. In the event the parity, we've gone north of the parity, and it's no longer germane. So that's why we have the off-ramps that are there. So you're absolutely right. They're two different questions altogether. But that's why we have the off-ramp that's built in there.
I have a healthy respect for this institution. I didn't seek to serve in it because I believe that we could eliminate the volatility of global financial markets or energy markets. The Torrance refinery is in my district. I'm very well aware of.
Yes, we had a hearing in your district.
Yeah.
Well,
I was there.
Yeah.
ask your question, Mr. Hadley.
If you are, just to make sure I understand what you're saying, are you saying that the all-in cost of energy will be lower as a result of these renewable mandates between now and 2030?
That is, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dowley and then Mr. Achajian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I just have a comment. I want to commend you on taking on this very difficult challenge, and I've appreciated the ability to be able to work with you in the past on carbon and how the state looks at carbon. As you know, we worked on forestry bills because we have large forest fires, and we are emitting a lot of carbon. And you could, in some of these fires, you could take every car out of the state of California from the amount of carbon that they're emitting. The other thing I wanted to talk about is that the devil's in the details. If we're going to be the world leader in California and showing the rest of the, not only other states, but the rest of the world, and I think the governor's going to Paris here soon, and he's going to be talking about, California's lead in this. The devil's in the details. If we get this wrong, we're going to look like fools in California, and if we do run businesses out of this state and we drive the price of energy up. So I would like to just say that, all renewables are not created equal because some get subsidies and some don't. And I know that you've worked with me in the past on some bills trying to level that playing field. So I look forward to working with you on I get to see this bill again in natural resources, and I look forward to working with you on how the outcomes that and the ability to be able to get down in the weeds a little bit and actually give the business community some idea of how we're going to regulate it. Instead of just setting a target like we did with AB 32, we just set the target and then kind of turn it over to the Air Board. But I would really like to see a little bit more detail in your bill so that business community then could understand how to make decisions to go forward. And that happened even to me in my business where, I'm being regulated with my commercial trucks and those type of things. And it would be nice to know exactly where we're headed. So if we could get a little more detail, because the devil is in the details, and that really is how we can show then the state how we're going to lead in this area. So I appreciate you taking this bill forward. I'm going to be laying off your bill today because I expect to be working with you in between now and the next committee.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dowley. Mr. Chaji and then Ms. Eggman.
Thank you, Mr.